the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Jane Tupana, the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Major General David Chilembe, retired, Assistant Commissioners, as well as the Deputy Assistant Commissioners present, the entire border management community with all its entirety, members of the media, and South Africa at large, good morning. On Sunday, the 3rd of December, 2023, we convened you here and presented our festive season plan, which was to be implemented from the 6th of December 2023 to the 18th of January 2024. So today we have reconvened to report on our implementation of that festive season plan, which ran for 43 days through December 2023, when we implemented the exit leg of the plan, and January 2024, when we focus on the return leg of the plan. As you may recall, we did increase the human resource capacity across our critical ports. We also requested the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, to help us to increase the operating hours in some of the selected ports of entries, which do not operate on a 24 hours. Maybe just to recap, the mandate of the Border Management Authority is to facilitate and manage the legitimate movement of persons and goods across our 71 ports of entries, of which 52 are land, 10 are international airports, and 9 are seaports. We would like yourselves to please note that our land ports of entries are now 52, no longer 53, after the recent decommissioning of Zanzibar port of entry with our border with Botswana. The work of the BMA covers areas in the ports of entries dealing with immigration issues, dealing with port health issues, environmental issues, agricultural biosecurity issues, including access control and general border law enforcement across the ports of entry, as well as the border law enforcement area. During the implementation of this festive plan, the BMA collaborated with a multiplicity of law enforcement stakeholders across South Africa, and that includes the South African Police Services, the South African Revenue Service, the South African National Defence Force, Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, Immigration Inspectorate from the Department of Home Affairs, and various other traffic authorities across the country. Therefore, on behalf of the Border Technical Committee of Directors Generals, as well as the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management, under the chairship of the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, allow me to present the 2023-2024 festive season report on border operations. Let's start on immigration matters. We want to report that the BMA has managed to facilitate the legitimate movement of around 5,096,288 travelers across our 71 ports of entries just between the 6th of December 2023 to the 18th of January 2024. This number represents an increase of over 1 million travelers compared to the 2022-2023 numbers of 4 million travelers. However, this number is still 1 million less to the pre-COVID average numbers of around 6 million travelers. In facilitating the movement of these travelers, we processed over 216,594 private vehicles. We processed around 21,502 minibus taxis. We processed around 6,443 buses. We processed about 55,765 trucks through our movement control system. Further, we processed over 13,050 aircrafts through our international airports and about 709 vessels across our seaports in the marine environment. In addition, about 407 vessels were processed for crew changes through the off-port limit mechanism, which means crew changes without a vessel docking at port in our marine environment. In this festive period, OR Tambo International Airport facilitated the majority of travelers at about 993,754, followed by Libombo land port of entry to Mozambique, which processed about 755,066 people, followed by the Bait Bridge land port of entry to Zimbabwe, which processed around 745,000 people, 563 travelers. So compared to the 2022-2023 festive period, we have observed that OR Tambo registered an increase of 22% of traveler volumes. Libombo registered about 24% increase, while Bait Bridge registered about 25% increase. Although our primary job as the Border Management Authority is to facilitate the legitimate movement of people, we also have to deal with individuals who attempt to illegitimately move through our ports of entry and border law enforcement areas. As such, in this festive period, we were able to detect about 15,924 individuals who were attempting to enter South Africa without a requisite documentation through our ports of entries and the vulnerable segments of the borderline. In this instance, after intercepting them, we fingerprinted them, we declared them undesirable, and we then banned them from re-entering South Africa for a period of 5 years and keep the record in our biometric movement control system and got them deported. The majority of these individuals were intercepted at around Libobo land port of entry to Mozambique at about 6,808 individuals, followed by Bait Bridge land port of entry to Zimbabwe at about 1,891 individuals. Further, about 6,455 travelers were denied entry into South Africa for being undesirable. These include individuals who committed crimes in other countries and appear on the Interpol red list. In addition, about 4,626 travelers were refused entry for being inadmissible. These include individuals with invalid passports, fraudulent visas, or failed to produce valid yellow fever certificates while traveling from yellow fever endemic countries. Therefore, in the 43 days of this festive period, when you add the numbers of the people intercepted for undocumented or having having documentation, which is 15,924, you add it with the number of the undesirables, which is the 6,455, and those that were inadmissible, which is 4,626. It is a total of 27,005 individuals who were fairly deported while attempting to enter South Africa illegally, just in the period of 43 days, from the 6th of December 2023 to the 18th of January 2024. During this period, we observed an increased detection rate on the undesirables. And this is due to the increased utilization of the biometric movement control system after the Department of Home Affairs actually assisted us in increasing the rollout of this particular system across the various ports of entry. We consider the BMCS as a contemporary movement control system for the reason that it allows our officials to capture the biometric data of individuals as they move through our ports of entries. Despite these interceptions, as the Border Management Authority, we remain concerned about some conveyancers, meaning public transporters, who continue to consciously transport illegal migrants across our ports of entry and border law enforcement area. During this period, we imposed 98 administrative fines to various conveyancers, especially bus companies, to the value of 3,540,000 rands for transporting illegal immigrants at the cost of 15,000 per person, as per Section 50, subsection 3 of the Immigration Act of 2002. At the same time, we were able to collect about 9.8 million in outstanding fines from about 25 bus companies. Further, we also held a meeting with about 30 bus companies which transport people in and out of South Africa and implored them to stop transporting illegal migrants into South Africa. In this regard, they have committed to ensure that valid transport will be a requirement when all travelers are procuring cross-border tickets and for entering into their buses on travel day. We further engaged the leadership of Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, the CBRTA, and agreed that bus companies should comply with the conditions of their cross-border permits. Otherwise, if they continue to transport illegal migrants into South Africa, such permits will be withdrawn. In this regard, we would like to call upon all law-abiding conveyancers, particularly the buses as well as the taxis, to effectively partner with the officials of the Border Management Authority and expose those conveyancers who continue not to observe the provisions of the Immigration Act, that they need to ferry people cross-border-wise who are having legitimate documentation. As the BMA, we would like to commend the sterling work of the law enforcement authorities in the neighboring countries and other parts of the continent who continue to assist us in intercepting, arresting, and deporting illegal migrants in their territories who are destined for South Africa. If we then move to reflect on general law enforcement matters, which we do working with the rest of the other law enforcement stakeholders within the Republic, the border guards were able to arrest about 246 criminal elements and confiscated about 4 troop boats, which are being used by facilitators to aid illegal migrants from crossing rivers into South Africa. In addition, various types of illegal drugs were confiscated that include 1.4 kg of crystal meth, commonly known as tick, 3.5 kgs of dagga, 4 grams of heroin, as well as 24 mandrax tablets. 10 tablets of depoxetine were also intercepted and confiscated, and all those are being processed for destruction. The border guards also participated in over 451 roadblocks, which were conducted together with the rest of the law enforcement authorities within 10-kilometer radius from the ports of entry. A further 4,638 foot as well as vehicle patrols were conducted across all modalities in the port of entries as well as the vulnerable segments of the borderline in land ports of entries as well as sea, or what is described as maritime. on the protection of South Africa from agricultural and environmental biosecurity threats, we want to report that we have been able to intercept and seize a number of unauthorized consignments of crayfish, canned meat products, infested tinned gammon ham, wheat, beer, hazelnut paste, hatching poultry eggs, pack of water, and various other plants and animals such as canines. In this regard, we would like to commend the majority of the travelers who heeded to our call to avoid bringing alien invasive species, as well as foreign pests associated with plants, animal products, and other regulated goods into South Africa. In this regard, it should be noted that the importation of plants and or animal or their respective products is highly regulated and requires the requisite sanitary as well as phytosanitary certification by the relevant government departments for presentation at the ports of entry. When reflecting on the port health matters, our team of health specialists were able to screen about 1,497,480 travelers across all our ports of entry for various infectious as well as communicable diseases in these 43 days of the festive period. As already indicated above, among those that were considered inadmissible and being denied entry into the Republic, 418 of those were travelers who could not produce the valid yellow fever certificates as a requirement for travelers who then come from yellow fever endemic countries. In this festive period, our health specialists attended to 361 patients with varied medical emergencies across the 71 ports of entries in the Republic. Following the outbreak of cholera in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, and some parts of Zambia, the Border Management Authority Port Health team intensified its screening activities, particularly in the Beitbridge land port of entry to Zimbabwe. As such, a case of cholera was detected at Beitbridge and was handed over to the Limpopo health authorities for further examination and treatment. Further, a total of 2,394 persons were cleared and granted a clean bill of health in various vessels at our maritime environment. Therefore, in order to protect South Africa from any kind of microbiological, chemical, communicable, and or infectious diseases, including any kind of physical environmental hazards, all returning travelers, in case they present any sign of illness or symptoms, they should visit their nearest health facilities or their private doctors for consultation with the intention to fully disclose their travel history. Despite all these efforts, as the Border Management Authority, we would like to acknowledge the outcry of South Africans on the challenges associated with illegal migration into South Africa. As such, we have started intensive conversations with the various stakeholders, including our neighboring countries, so that they help us in addressing this particular scourge. At this point, we would like to encourage all South Africans, in line with Section 5, subsection C of the Border Management Authority Act, to continue to engage with us on all matters relating to border management. Despite the end of the 2023 and 2024 festive period, as the Border Management Authority, we have put measures in place to sustain our intensified border operations and consolidate our border management functions going into the future. From these operations, we are already putting plans in place for the management of the upcoming Easter festive period that is coming in the next few weeks. In closing, the border management leadership would like to appreciate the cooperation received from the various law enforcement authorities in South Africa, those from our neighboring countries, and some from the other part of the world in this past festive period. Despite our limited resources, we would like to appreciate the work of our immigration specialists, health specialists, including environmental and agricultural biosecurity experts, for the great work done during this past festive period. We do note that because of capacity challenges, some of them had to work overtime and, of course, continue to work over the clock to make sure that the country is provided with the appropriate border management services as required of us by the Border Management Authority Act. We'd also like to thank our team of border guards as well as the coastal guards who continue to do their best in the midst of challenges and complexities associated with border law enforcement work. As we continue to do this work, we do believe that South Africa will rally behind us and assist us to improve our capacity and enroll the requisite technologies required for effective border management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Masiapato, for that insightful and detailed briefing on the activities of the Border Management Authority during the festive season. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by Takalani Mokwebo, who's going to be assisting me with facilitating media interview questions. He will be taking care of the online questions. At this point, I would like to open the session for question and answers for clarity. And I would request that as a journalist, please introduce yourself together with the media house that you are representing before you pose the question.
Katel Sokoto from Newsroom Africa. Commissioner, thank you for that detailed outline. Just on the question regarding, we saw during the festive period, the PA's Gayton McKenzie taking to patrolling the borders himself with members of his party. This, outlines perhaps the political interference in relation to how the borders or ports of entry, specifically land, are being managed. And, obviously for their own political reasons, they decided to do this themselves. Just your reaction on that, as well as the rules that apply to political members, parties, members of parliament, as to what steps they can actually take in the law, in terms of the law, what they can and cannot do.
Thank you, Katlego. Is there any other question?
Thanks. Training from ENCA. Commissioner, you talked about the 43-day period between December and January where this was recorded. Just in terms of the Home Affairs being offline at the beginning of the year, I think it was around the 3rd or the 4th of January, how much of an impact would that have had on operations? And then how reliable, how would that have affected the numbers that you had? Is it possible that the numbers in terms of the entries and those leaving are not as they would have been given the disturbance to the system at the time?
Thank you for that. Is there any other question?
Thank you so much, colleagues. Michael Dewett from SABC, Channel Africa. Just wanted to know, in terms of logistics during your operations, what was the most daring exercise or challenging exercise that you encountered during your operations, since this was the most effective exercise that you have encountered since the inception of BMA, after the end of COVID. I think this has been the period where the world has been opened and you experienced a lot of travelers. So what was the most challenging amongst your operations? Thank you.
Sorry. And then just to follow up on the Lebombo and the Beitbridge numbers as well, especially the Beitbridge number, where it says that there were 1,891 travelers or people coming in that were intercepted. Do we know do we have an idea how many more possibly that managed to come into the country without being intercepted? Is there an idea of that sort of number? And also, when you say that the boats that were, or the tube boats, I think that were intercepted, also that people were arrested in terms of that, are these that were arrested officials of the Department of Home Affairs or government that are assisting people come into the country legally? Do we know who those sorts of people are that are arrested for that?
Okay, thank you for those questions. We'll take that as the first round of questions, and then we'll take another round after this one.
Thanks, colleagues, for the questions. The colleagues should be able to assist in responding to some of the questions. The question that comes from Katleho around a political party that had, I suppose, tried to be doing border management work. I suppose we should be able to firstly agree that as the leadership of the Border Management Authority, we do respect the political leadership of the country, across all of the various political parties. We do report on the work that we do to Parliament, where most of the political parties are represented. And therefore, in terms of the interface or the interaction between the Border Management Authority and any of the existing, I will say, non-governmental structures, or even just private citizens, the Border Management Authority Act, Section 5, subsection C, tells us that as we do this work, we need to cooperate with other principal organs of state. And the law there is explicit about the police, it's about SARS, it's about the Defense Force. Then it says we need to also cooperate with border communities, which effectively include, I suppose, your border farming communities and all of those. At the same time, it says we should also cooperate with any other stakeholder interested on issues of border management. In the statement, we indicate that we would like to call upon all South Africans and any other stakeholder with interest on issues of border management to engage with us and be able to make sure that we are actually doing this work in a way that is fairly provided for in law. If you are to look at just the general policing work, as it were, you will remember in the context of the South African Police Services, they do have what is called the community policing forums. Those are forums established for the communities to assist members of the SAPS to do their work, not necessarily to take over policing work, primarily because it is dangerous to do so. That is the same principle in as far as border management issues are concerned, especially when we talk activities that are closer to the borderline. Because any of the countries, especially our immediate neighboring countries, do have their own law enforcement authorities sitting on the other side of the borderline, also doing border management work. and those are law enforcement authorities that are fairly armed. Therefore, in instances where we might have people entering into that particular law enforcement space and wanting to do law enforcement themselves, that already becomes a dangerous exercise. That is why we call upon any of the South African to be able to interface with us, and we should be able to cooperate because the law says we need to do so. That is how we respond to that particular question. If there is any other issue that sounds a bit political, as the Border Management Authority, we are not necessarily qualified to reflect on political issues. We do have a team of political principals who sits in the Interministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management under the chairship of Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, who is the Minister of Home Affairs. And therefore, when issues becomes political, we should be able to refer those to them, for them to be able to entertain political related issues. But where we sit, given the work we are given, we are not able to reflect on issues that might be political. Now, Katleho, you refer to members of parliament, for instance. Members of parliament are treated the same. We are a border management authority. We report to the Portfolio Committee of Home Affairs. And in a number of occasions, members of parliament do visit the ports. Members of cabinet, ministers do visit the port and any other. And when they do so, we interact with, we receive them officially. If they need to see the activities we do at the port, we take them through the activity areas and all of those kind of issues. We do the same with the members of the media. Those of yourselves who had been in the ports, especially in the festive period, we have done the walkabout with yourselves, showing you the various aspects of the work that we do, it be the issues relating to immigration, issues relating to port health, issues relating to agriculture, or even issues relating to environmental biosecurity, or even law enforcement. Those colleagues, I suppose the newsroom colleagues will tell you, we drove for almost 40 kilometers along the borderline in Beitbridge when we were there during January, as it were. So all of those things are actually allowed by law, but we just need to be able to talk about those issues, as it were. Now, the issue raised by Cloney, by the way, the general will talk a bit on some of the operational challenges, but the issue raised by Cloney about the Home Affairs being offline in the beginning of January. We were in Beitbridge, I think it was on the 4th. I did get that indication from the spokesperson of the Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Sia Toza, to indicate that he got some media inquiries about Home Affairs systems being down, and he was able to communicate the issue, and he was also able to clarify when the systems in Home Affairs became online. However, we want to confirm that that particular incident in the Department of Home Affairs did not affect Border Management Authority at all. The Department of Home Affairs do have systems that deals with issues of passports or issuing passports, issuing IDs and things like that. And that is the system that we understand to have been down. And from our side, we did not necessarily have any impact, primarily because our system that we use is the biometric movement control system and the enhanced movement control system, as well as the e-visa system where we verify the visas as people arrive at the port of entry, and all those systems were not affected. However, if somebody says, what about somebody who might want to have traveled on the day and the Home Affairs system of passport was down, what would that impact have been? I suppose if that is the question, we should be able to agree that Home Affairs should be able to indicate how many people tried to get passports and they couldn't because of that. But in as far as border management work, we were not affected in as far as that incident is concerned. Now, as I said, my colleague from Channel Africa, the general will reflect on some of the challenges that we dealt with. The only thing that I want to indicate, by the way, something we did not put in the statement, is to appreciate the cooperation with the motorists, even in the busiest of the ports, whether it is Fixback to Lesotho, whether it is Maseru Bridge to Lesotho, whether it is Kopfontein to Botswana, whether it is Oshhoek to Swaziland. We want to commend all of the travelers, even those who are driving private vehicles, who cooperated with the members of the Border Management Authority, and they actually kept the discipline on the corridor towards the port. However, we want to demonstrate that we were very much disappointed with the conduct of the travelers on the N1 corridor to Bait Bridge, especially during the exit phase, as well as those on the N4 corridor to Libombo into Mozambique. It is only those two corridors where we had a bit of a challenge, where drivers opted to even close the oncoming traffic lanes, and those became very much problematic, especially on the 22nd of December, the 23rd of December, and in Bait Bridge also the 24th of December. Those were the only two ports where we had some bit of a challenge, but a challenge on issues of corridor management, not necessarily border management activities in the port, but just on the corridor. And that is what we were very much kind of disappointed, but we really want to call upon the colleagues as we go to the next operation in the Easter period that they need to cooperate with the colleagues. We do everything possible in the port to facilitate the movement as fast as possible. And by the way, I can also indicate that for the first time, never reached in any of the land ports for all these years, that we actually managed to process 28,000 people in one day on the 23rd of December 2023 in Libombo, port of entry. And we get to understand that included a number of South Africans who were going to Maputo for their holidays, as it were. So that is that. Before General comes through, let me reflect a bit on this issue around the intercepted boats, as it were. So here we are not talking about people in Home Affairs to be arrested. You will remember when we talk about the ports of entry, we no longer have the Department of Home Affairs. So the people there who do immigration are employees of the Border Management Authority after the interception. So if we are to talk about the people of Home Affairs, will be the Immigration Inspectorate that came to assist us, and some of the other officials assisting us. But the reality of it is the work there is done by the Border Management Authority. So in this instance, we talk about the boats that some of the facilitators who facilitate people to cross the boats use. So in that instance, they leave the boats and run to the neighboring country's side. So we talk about the boats that we confiscate and make sure that they actually get destroyed. So the people that we talk about that got arrested, all in all, is the people who do different types of crimes outside just illegal migration. Because remember, if you are in the border law enforcement area and you do a classical crime, we cannot deport you. We have to make sure that you get taken into the South African Police Services. You must go to the cells and you must go to the court systems because you have done a conventional crime. It is only those who have just subverted immigration laws that we have to process for deportation, as it were. And those are the ones we are referring to when we say those that committed other crimes other than the immigration-related crimes, as it were. So that is, I suppose those are the responses. General, I suppose, was also on the ground. He might reflect on some of the issues that we had to deal with. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Colleagues, I think the Commissioner has touched on most of the issues that have been asked, but I'll comment on the issue that was asked by SABC, Mr. Mbewe, on the issues of logistics, that what is the most logistics that have been a challenge to us. Colleagues, you'll remember that we've been consistent about this issue, that the borders that we are inheriting, these were borders that were done or a long time ago for a specific reason. They were never done for what is currently they are experiencing. So the high level of goods or traveler movement have been challenging the current situation that we are having. Most of our land borders are a choke point. They are built in mountains, in rivers, or in gorges, and they are also back to back to with our neighboring countries. So it challenges us mostly in terms of logistics, because when we do this the work that we do, we need to do co-locations. In other words, moving from the border itself and co-locate with our neighboring countries in order for us to be able to function. And we have also been busy with the diverting traffic from the original port of entry into in order for us to be able to deal with the issues on the ground. However, there are measures that have been put in place. It's not that we're just crying on those issues. You might know that we have identified 6 main ports of entries that have to be redesigned and redeveloped in order to address the issue in question with regards to logistics. And also these issues of co-location or diversion, it comes with other issues like your financial issues that we need to pay officials on over time. We need to bring more officials on the space in order to cover those areas. So those are the things that in terms of logistics, that are affecting us. And as you know, we don't have all the requisite resources that we will have wanted in order for us to be able to deal with this issue. The other issue, the commissioner have touched on it, on the interception of the boats, or those boats that people are using on the ground in the vulnerable segments. We have identified those areas, and the border guards, we have put them there to deal with those issues. But also it comes with financial resources that we need to ensure that we have movable infrastructure for them to be in those areas. I think those are the 2 things that Commissioner I would have reacted on. Thank you.
Members of the media, I just wanted to check if there are any more questions. Okay, Micah.
It's based on the keys that were found. I think before the first breaking of the first leg, the commissioner announced that the keys from Zimbabwe that were intercepted at the Bedford border post. And this issue caused a spat between the government of Zimbabwe, who were denying that these are not our kids. It even opted for the counterpart from Zimbabwe to come to South Africa to meet the commissioner and then have a dialogue. And then also the issue about Zimbabwe also copying the style of BMA. I think we saw the commissioner also discussing with the counterpart. So we just wanted to know, how was that resolved, the issue of the kids? Because apparently they were denying that these kids were not from Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Okay.
Just
Johnny.
So I asked in the previous round, I have a question for this round, but in the previous round, I asked, is there an idea of knowing those that try to enter, especially the 15,000, and you said mostly from the Lukombo border and Bainbridge border. Is there an idea of how many would have gone through? I know maybe this is impossible to know, but is there an idea, how many would have gone through without being detected? And then the other thing is, I'm not sure if at this point the 43-day operation is an idea, an indication of the cost of it, and how much manpower would have been required for that.
All right, Katal Sokoto again from Newsroom Africa. Commissioner, you mentioned the bus companies who were transporting illegal migrants at the cost of 15,000 Rand per person. Just in terms of that, the bus companies themselves, is this part of your conversations with our neighboring countries? Are these bus companies from the other countries, or are these South African bus companies? Just a little bit more detail in that respect, if you will.
Okay, and from the online, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Madam. We do have two questions from online platforms. One is from Elmo Cruz from Independent Media. And the question is, how many border posts are now one-stop border posts? And the second one from Angelo Coppola from CGTN. And the question is, why haven't the conveniences been prosecuted, and why have been given the second chance? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Thanks. Maybe just to apologize to Claudia for having missed that question, because I see that I wrote it here, but I missed it. And let me start there before I go to Michael's point. You are asking that all in all, as the BMA, we say, if you look at the undocumented, which is sitting at around 15,000, we look at the inadmissibles, they are sitting at around 6,000, and obviously the ones who are undesirable. We have stopped 27,000 all in all. And your question is, how many would we have missed? So what we can easily answer with very much certainty is that when it comes to air travel, or what you will call international airports, we wouldn't have missed anyone. And the reason for that is because the environment is well controlled, the environment is highly professional, the conveyancers themselves, which means the air companies, or what you will call whether it's your Emirates or all of those, they do a lot of due diligence in terms of assisting us that the people they carry in the aircrafts are people who comply, they have passports and all of those issues. It is only on the basis of those that we pick up the hit through our biometric movement control system at the airport, which the airline would not know. Hence, we detect them, and that is why we then ultimately take them back. Now, if we go to the other two modalities, is the issue of sea and the issue of land. What we can actually put very clear without any contradiction is that we are not at this stage, not even just as Border Management Authority, but as a country, we are not at this stage have a full proof coverage in as far as surveillance of our borderline is controlled. So on that basis, we are not able to tell you how many would we have missed. It is for that reason, Katleho, Cloney, that we want to actually spend some money in the deployment of technology in as far as border management is concerned. We spoke about having to finalize our procurement of drones. We have indicated that we are at advanced stages with AMSCO in that particular process for the purposes of getting the drones, so that they will help us to do a full surveillance of the entire vulnerable segments. So, as you said yourself, we are not necessarily able to say how many were not detected. Maybe at the same time, we might also want to indicate, why did we have a bit of a decrease comparatively or compared to Libombo in terms of the interceptions? You will realize that Libombo is leading, followed by Beitbridge. Our assessment of that reality is that given the intensification of border control activities at Beitbridge and the surrounding, some of the people who had previously entered the country illegally avoided coming through. It is for that reason that we are now looking at our Groblersdal Bridge port of entry on the northwest into Botswana, because the indications we are getting is that there are some people who are avoiding Beitbridge, entering Botswana and coming through on the Groblersdal Bridge side. So we are actually hard at work to also address that particular reality. And that is why we could not 100% be telling how many we would not have intercepted. Now, let me also deal with your second question, Tony, before I go back to Michael, is the issue of the 43 days festive period, as to how much would it have cost and how many people would we have wanted. I think that is a very complex question, especially the second part. How many people would we have wanted? So if you were to look at the Border Management Authority and you were to look at the roadmap and you were to look at the ultimate intended rollout and the capacity required, the current document talks to BMA being fully grounded at around 2030. And when the document was approved in 2016, we were anticipating that we'll say we are a bit comfortable if we have at least around 15,000, I will say, staff complement to address all of the work that we have to do across all the three modalities, which is land, sea, as well as air. So we will say that is what is actually required. But for now, as you will know, we are sitting at around just 2,000 or 2,100 ultimately. So that is the reality in as far as the people is concerned. What will this have cost? We have been running operations for all this while in all the festive period. December is the biggest one. We then do others in Easter period, which is a bit lower compared to December. And we have a lot of other major events that we facilitate, whether it's BRICS that happened in August last year. This year, we know the G20 is coming. It's going to be another big work and all of that. So operations cost as per the work that we do all the time, on the basis that we do get people to work a bit of overtime and ultimately get people to also have some other additional resources into the space. So if you are really to ask how much did it cost for now, I wouldn't have the figure. The CFO is here. She should be able to start putting the figures together as the colleagues were going to various ports to support the operations. So I suspect that is something that we could be able to communicate a bit later. Back to Michael's question. Let's put it this way. You see, the work that we do, if we can be very honest, it is a highly politically charged work, in as much as we are not politicians. So what we always do when we do this work, we avoid being embroiled into the political space. So we do our work and we interact with the colleagues of our nature in terms of other jurisdictions. But once the issues become political, we don't necessarily entertain that particular aspect. So if we can just reflect on that point, colleagues, that thing was kind of covered to say, we got the children and we actually handed them to the Zim authorities. You will remember there was contradictory issues that came between the Ministry of Social Services that side and the Ministry of Home Affairs that side. which are all at the political level. And again, we don't entertain those. Now, on that particular basis, what did we do at the technical level? We called our colleagues. We had a delegation of 19 officials that came from the Zimbabwean side across all the various streams. We sat down with them. On our side, we invited the leadership of the Department of Social Development, led by the DG Mtun, who was part of the conversation. And we had to get that issue addressed because it was just something that was unnecessarily escalated into some political issues, which actually was not necessary. The reality of it is the social departments did their work to reconcile the children with their families, and all of those aspects are done. Any other issue related to the law enforcement as to the culprits and all, it is being handled by the Zimbabwean police, as it were. But in terms of our principle, as we said even before, we are not going to be allowing unaccompanied minors without requisite documentation entering the Republic or even exiting the Republic. That one is provided for in law. If we actually don't do that work according to those prescripts, it is us who will then be arrested. And that is a very much clear issue. I was saying to somebody who was saying, no, but actually you should relax these things and all of that. And we said, think about it. Your neighbor taking your child who is 5 years old and try to go with that child and cross into Zimbabwe, and you do not know. Number one, we have no copy of the passport for yourself. We have no letter saying this child is going with this neighbor and all that. Then you discover that as the Border Management Authority, we allowed an individual to cross a border with your 5-year-old, and you tell us you did not know. And we did not require the documents that are required for us to be able to allow the child to exit. Obviously, you're going to go to court and you're going to litigate against the BMA for allowing your 5-year-old to exit with a stranger. In the same way, we are not going to be allowing just an individual coming with a 5-year-old without the requisite documentation. And the law is clear in the regulation on what are the requirements: the passport of the person receiving the child this side, the address of the person receiving the child, the letter of demonstrating this person is allowed to travel with this child, and all of those. And we know that at some point people were even saying, yeah, but you need to be able to interview and what. I mean, honestly, interviewing a 5-year-old from a law enforcement authority is something else. So, colleagues, what is very much important is this work that we are doing is very much critical. We cannot afford to politicize this work. It is a very serious work. So on that basis, the laws are set. We do not make the laws, we implement the laws. If some people will say, but you should have allowed the children in, then let's go into Home Affairs and make them to change the law and say, let's allow anybody in. Then we will comply. But for now, there is a law to be observed. And that is what we are implementing. So that is in as far as that part. From where we sit now, the children are now reconciled with their families, and the police that side are trying to check who are these individuals who were busy with all of this activity, as it were. Now, back to Katlego. Bus companies, are they South African? Let me put it this way. When we say in the statement we met with around 30 bus companies, here we talk about bus companies that are South African and bus companies that are not South African, in as far as registration is concerned. So in the meeting we had Zimbabwean people who own buses, and we had South African and all of that. In that particular meeting, we had the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency CEO and the rest of the leadership. The CBRTA is the one that gives the people who ferry people between borders what we call cross-border permits, especially the conveyancers, the buses and the like. So on that basis, we had to put the principles on the table very clearly that they should make sure that when people procure cross-border tickets, they must make sure that anybody who does that, meaning I am to travel to Zimbabwe, I am going to buy a bus ticket, I must produce the passport at the point of buying the ticket. The same passport must be produced at the point of me entering the bus. We want them to do that by the book, because if they don't, you will remember the regulations, Immigration Act if we find anybody in your bus, is 15,000 rands per person. The principle we have put on the table is the moment they continue to ferry illegal migrants and the administrative fines continue to be imposed and they are not even paying it, we are going to activate the CBRTA to have those cross-border permits withdrawn. Now, the complexity of these issues, there are buses that are completely foreign registered, and in that way, they are not necessarily given the cross-border permits by South Africa. The structures in their countries are there to do the same for those bus companies. When we said we have intensified engagement, we mean we are now expanding our engagement with those particular companies. In the meeting that we had the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Bus Companies in Zimbabwe, which most of the bus companies are affiliated to that organization. He was in the meeting and he took the message back home. But we know that there are other bus companies, if we talk Bridge, that will be coming from the DRC, Tanzania, Zambia, and the like. So we have to reach also those and make sure that the principles are clearly understood in as far as that part is concerned. But in any event, at the port level, we keep on giving them the requirements on paper to make sure that they assist us in dealing with this particular reality. That is why I said when it comes to air, we don't have much of an issue, because the air companies or the airline companies are very much compliant, and we are very much happy about that reality. Now, Helmo is saying how many of our ports of entry are already operating as a one-stop border post. Let's indicate the implementation of a one-stop border post officially has not yet commenced as South Africa. As the General had indicated, there are 6 ports of entries identified to be redesigned and redeveloped. The Minister of Home Affairs has already issued a request for proposals to the market for the private sector to come and assist us to redesign those ports. They are Bridge to Zimbabwe, there are Libombo to Mozambique, there are Oshuk to Swaziland, there are Maseru Bridge to Lesotho, there are Fixback to Lesotho, and there is also Kofontaine to Botswana. Those are the 6. So once they are redesigned, it is when we are then to start officially implementing a one-stop border post. And at that point, you will be aware that the one-stop border policy has been approved. And now we are going to be starting the process of making a law that is going to govern this whole issue of one-stop border post. Because in actual fact, the implementation means there will be South African officials who will then go work on the Zimbabwean side, and the Zimbabwean officials come work on our side in the same way as Lesotho and all of those, whether it's Botswana and all of those. So for that kind of a thing to happen, you need a law that will regulate that, and we don't have that as yet. However, in the current, we do have a mechanism we use wherein we do a co-locating for the purpose of the festive period, where we try to manage people better so that we are able to facilitate people movement. But it is not yet the full application of a one-stop border post. So that response to, I think, is Helmo online. Maybe the last one is Angelo. Why are the conveyances not being prosecuted? Let's put it this way. There are 2 things. The first one, when somebody carries illegal migrants in a conveyancer, according to Section 50, subsection 3 of the Immigration Act and the accompanying regulations, it does indicate we must impose what is called administrative fine. And that is what we've been imposing. So when you have to get an administrative fine, it is an administrative activity. It is not necessarily a criminal activity. And that is why we are giving those fines for having subverted those particular provisions. I do know that intellectually there are discussions if somebody breaks the law, whether they are not criminal by breaking the law. But in the same way, there are issues that we call civil and there are issues that we call criminal. And I think those things are fairly understood in the Republic in as far as those activities are concerned. So I want to indicate that administrative fines are for that. But additional to that, there is a criminal part that we call aiding and abetting. And that is one thing that I want to indicate. We are moving in that direction. But we couldn't move in that direction having started intensifying the law enforcement work up to this point. Because if we were to do that, it means that we were going to, at the same time, be overwhelmed. And that is why we are starting the process of engaging, the process of educating, and say, there is a new organization here established for border law enforcement activities for entering the Republic. These are the rules, these are the issues. Based on that, we should be able to start educating them to say, you continue on this, then we move into aiding and abating, and on that particular basis, these are going to be the consequences. Why has this not been done before? I suppose it was not done before because there might not have been a dedicated border law enforcement authority to start doing things differently. And that is why we have started that job. And by the way, I do know at the same time that in as much as the BMA was launched by the president on the 5th of October, and just 2 months, if not a month, from being launched into running operations, there are still indications where people would want to label the BMA on the basis of the historical challenges. And that is very much unfortunate. And that is why in the statement we are urging South Africans to actually assist us to do this work and support us to do this work. Because at the end of the day, if we are not able to appreciate something new established to resolve the historical issues, but we want to use the historical issues to bash the current, then the future is not going to be clear. And that is what we are actually pleading with South Africans to do for us. And that is why at some point we even say, at least give us some few months and see if we can have some bit of a impact. But at the same time, we are asking you to help us to be capacitated, to be able to do this work according to what the law requires of us. So that is basically what we can say up to this point. And therefore, we have to make sure that the people who are supposed to assist us in this work do assist us. And in this instance, we spoke about the conveyancers. You can just imagine. It's not an easy task. It's a very complicated task. We had instances where a bus company will come with almost everybody in the company illegal and literally disappear into the bushes. And then the company enters the port very clean, no one, empty, driver, every document is there. The bus, nothing they owe, they cross on the other side. And the people then emerges on the other side from the bushes to join the bus. And then from there, the bus then gets picked up somewhere in the country. What does that mean? It means we have a lot of work to do. And that is why we do the deployment of the border guards in the vulnerable segments to make sure that we counter those kind of activities. But we can fully succeed if the bus company does not do that. Once the bus company does not do that, we are also assisted. There is no one under normal circumstances who can literally run, whether from Beitbridge or Fixbeck, and run into Joburg. There are people who convey such people, and that is why we want those people to help us. If somebody doesn't have the documents, do not convey them, because otherwise you are going to be prosecuted for aiding and abetting the illegal movement of migrants. And that is what we want to call upon those people that are in this business. Otherwise, as I said, these permits are actually going to be taken away. So we are moving gradually into that direction, and it is going to be hectic if some of the conveyancers will not want to cooperate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think we have come to the end of the session. But before we do that, I would like to thank you, the media, those that are present here and those that are connected remotely for the insightful interaction that you had with us this morning. And we thank you so much, because I think this is very much important that you are able to carry the message to the larger public. Colleagues, we leave the borders and we don't concentrate on the borders. We're going to face the current situation that we're facing in the country. So it is very much important that we are able to come and talk to you, and you then relay the message to the larger public on the job that we have been given. It's a very important job, but a very difficult one. And we are here, and we are saying we are going to be able to deal with the issue. Our next major engagement with the media and everybody, we will also do it in the next few weeks, because we are approaching the Easter season. We'll be able to engage with you on those issues. Commissioner, thank you so much for the media statement and the release that we have done. I know it's not an easy thing to prepare, and also to ensure that we pass the message that is needed to be passed on. Deputy Commissioner Tupana, thank you so much. I know that the whole arrangements falls under your branch. Thank you for that. The other assistant commissioners who are here, the CFO, CIO, thank you so much that you, instead of going to church, you decided to come and join us in this endeavor that we are busy with. The other colleagues from the border management also, I thank you so much that we were able to come over and have this session. To DAC Mokoti, thank you so much for...
Commissioner.